morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
We'd like to start the regular session of the Board of Supervisors meeting for February 3rd, 2026. Roll call, please. Mr. Bailey.
Brand? Here. Hall? Kurtenbach? Here. Schwartz? Here. Leyland?
Here. Would everyone please join us in a moment of silence as we reflect on our actions here today? Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 1 is the agenda received as proposed or as amended.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The agenda is received. Item 2 is public comments. Is there anyone in today's audience that would like to speak on something that is not on today's agenda?
Hi,
Give your name and address, please.
my name is James B. Robeson. My address is 1555 North Street. And as I just said to you, Ms. Lynch, I came here over a year ago about problems with code enforcement and code enforcement officer committing fraud by going downtown or coming down here to the county attorney and filing charges and getting a court order to remove my vehicles. And when I got out, there was videotape, and clearly on the tape, you could hear him say, "Don't take that vehicle. It's got license, it's got current plates, and I know it runs," because he moved from one side of the house to the other. Ever since then, I've been unsuccessful in trying to get law enforcement to look at this fraud. Mr. Williams, you said you would speak.
We did.
No, but you didn't really have it.
We did not.
Yeah, bro. You said you scheduled time.
Mr. Robeson.
And we,
Mr. Robeson.
when will that be? Oh, and,
We
I'm
need
sorry.
you- No,
Well,
we need you just to speak to
yeah.
us today.
Well, I just need to address this to Mr. Williams, the county attorney. When will he speak to me and look at the evidence that I have? Because it's continuing. The code enforcement officers have come back out there again. And as I just explained to you off the record, I've done a massive amount of research. You can't arbitrarily enforce the law. Now, this property was purchased it was built in 1951. The county approved this house to be built without a hard surface driveway. 80 to 90% of people who live on this side of town don't have a hard surface driveway. My parents purchased it in 63, they were assured how this house sat without a hard surface driveway was legal. Throughout the 60s, nobody considered us illegal. We didn't have a problem with code enforcement. The 70s, the 80s, the 90s. Not until 2001 when you got a particular code enforcement officer. Then all of a sudden, we're illegal. Now, looking at the original writing of the code, which the city code of ordinances was written in 69, so that predates it. We predate that. So actually, in a lot of instances, we are grandfathered. Plus, it's an acreage. It's agricultural property. I got the abstract. Right 6 months after my parents bought that house, the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, before that, they couldn't even buy in that area, period. In any direction that you coming up Newell Street, to get to my house on Newell Street, you have to either come up Newell Street, come down Newell Street, come up Idaho, come down Idaho, turn down Newell Street. Any direction that you come in, you see non-hard surface driveways, people parking on. And I can go into other situations, situation after situation after situation, what the city of Waterloo is doing and how they're wishy-washy on these codes. You've had situations which your offices had to get involved in which the city of Waterloo has said, well, they were here first. Like, say, for instance, the strip club, with the many situations that's going on down there. They don't predate the ordinance. Even in the ordinance back then, one of the things that they said, well, we're not going to have people parking in their front yard. But on the other side of town, where you have a lot of properties where they have drives through the front yard, they made an exception. So, like I said, you need to do something with this. I know what's driving it, a lot of it, and I can say a whole lot more that the public needs to know, but you say financial responsibility, accountability, you just read the Pledge of Allegiance and transparency. You need to get with it.
Thank you. We extended you some grace and time, but thank you. I know
All right,
there's a
so
lot you had to say.
when are we gonna meet? See, now, I just said to you, and I don't mean to disparage you or anything like that, but a person has made an accusation against you. Now, they weren't stalled, they weren't told, I don't know when I'm gonna meet with you. Somebody looked at the evidence and said, well, yes, this is a problem, we're gonna charge them. I'm getting from your office, from the sheriff's office, from the Waterloo Police Department, when I come with evidence and I'm saying, look, you don't have to take my word for it. It's what I said, it's what they said, but I got video footage,
Okay.
which shows exactly what happens. But yet, you're gonna make a decision that you're not gonna immediately address my concerns when I have evidence, but you look at somebody else's evidence.
Well, I'm sorry, we're not gonna be able to answer that for you today.
But one of the things that it touches
Hey,
upon
Mr.
is,
Herbst, I'll talk to you outside if you want.
now, one of the things that it touches upon is this. Look, in order to get federal funding, you have to treat everybody here the same. You have to offer the same services. You hear me? The same services to everybody who walks through this door.
Supervisor
All right.
Grant is willing to speak with you at the moment, so thank you. But, thank you. Anyone else in the room that would like to speak today during public comments? Please state your name and address and welcome to.
Excuse me. Good morning. My name is Ashley Hovey. I reside at 10406 Hammond Avenue in Waterloo. I'm here today as a concerned lifelong resident of Blackhawk County. A few of you received an email from me on January 29th, and I appreciate your time and the opportunity to speak with you directly today. I'm here to bring to your attention and to ask for your assistance with illegal dumping in our county. This includes not only household waste, but also the improper disposal of both dead and live animals. Our county encompasses 761 miles of roadway and more than 1,500 miles of ditches. According to page 6 of the Blackhawk County Sheriff's Office 2024 annual report, there are currently 3 deputies assigned to first shift investigations and 5 deputies on patrol per shift. That equates to 1 investigations deputy covering approximately 253 miles. What I found particularly concerning is that less than 16% of the sheriff's 2023 and 2024 budget is allocated to rural areas. As a taxpayer living outside city limits, I want to remind you that we pay the rural levy in addition to the general county levy and other applicable taxes. Waterloo Animal Control is part of the Waterloo Police Department, hence this does not help anyone outside city limits. Cedar Bend Humane Society states that it supports the community by providing services and working to reduce animal cruelty. It also claims that Blackhawk County Animal Control responds to calls and assists with rescuing abandoned, sick, injured, and stray animals in rural areas, with an officer on call weekdays and emergencies handled through the sheriff after hours. This is false. As I have been told on several occasions, Animal Control cannot respond unless a sheriff initiates the call. Summer of 2024, Cedar Valley Pit Bull Rescue was the only organization willing to help when 2 emaciated pit bulls were dumped alive on our gravel road. This call for help was disconnected from the Cedar Bend Humane Society Director, Christy Gardner. That is not what community support should look like. Lance Tysinger with the Sheriff's Office is the first person I have spoken with who has listened and made me feel like he cared. He admitted himself there is a disconnect between the office and the Humane Society contract. This specific incident he and I connected on was a deceased dog dumped on East Quarry Road. Dispatch was called and the dog laid there for over 30 hours before Lance himself took care of it. This was yet another incident the Humane Society hung up on dispatch. These are just 2 examples of incidents we've had in the same spot. I have heard of countless Facebook posts of this happening all over the county. The illegal dumping we encounter includes a variety of things. I don't have time today to touch on the many other suspicious activities we see and call on. The county's own code of ordinances clearly prohibits unauthorized dumping and littering with enforcement mechanisms and penalties already defined. I am not here simply to complain. I'm here to ask for a more structured, transparent plan to address illegal dumping and animal abandonment in our county. Rural residents deserve a reliable response and the same level of care that is afforded within city limits. Thank you for your attention to this matter, and I would appreciate information on forthcoming board discussions or initiatives related to the issues I spoke on today.
I know Sheriff Neff responded, I think, to you as well. Sheriff Neff did respond to you?
No.
Oh, just
No, just Lance.
Okay.
Yes.
I was gonna say, thank you, Lance, I was gonna say.
Oh, big effort. It's forwarded.
Anyone else that has anything they'd like to speak to today? Anyone online that has anything in public comments? We'll move on to years of service awards to employees with 20 or more years of service.
We have one today, and it's Lance Tysinger with 40 years in the sheriff's department. Lance?
One of the things we'd like to shake your hand.
Yeah.
Your man in the hour,
Thank
40
you.
years, wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks
We'll get
for
the picture
Oh,
too.
sure.
Your certificate?
Okay.
Thank you.
Get
I got it.
it.
Anything you want to say today, Lance, you feel free to step to the podium.
No, actually, I've been here 40 years. The first year as a civilian jailer, and then got hired about a week after my first year on, and I've enjoyed it. Blackhawk County has been really good to me and good to my family. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your service.
Item number 4, claims and payments. Resolution that the Board of Supervisors approve expenditures and that the county auditor be authorized and directed to issue payments against the various settlement of such claims as allowed.
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded, Ms. Weidner, please.
Good morning, Board. Our total bill payment today is $208,593.50. We'd like more of those. Hello? The 60/40 fund of that is $3,169.51. And the only notable thing, we are making a payment of $50,000 to Schumacher Elevator to repair the elevator at Pinecrest. Everything appears to be in order. Any questions for me today?
Hearing none, this is a resolution. Please answer as your name is called.
Grant? Kurtenbach? Yes. Schwartz? Yes. Leyland?
Yes. Item number 5, receive project updates from department heads and elected officials. Without seeing Kathy, I almost thought we had.
No, morning, Ryan Brennan, Assistant County Engineer. Had a little snow overnight, so obviously the crews were out this morning at 5 a.m. to get things cleared off. Things are looking pretty good at this point. They'll probably spend most of the rest of their week getting things cleaned up, probably make some more salt sand. Hopefully our bridge crew will have time to pour their last deck unit for this next summer, so get that completed and just working through project otherwise for.
Ryan, when are they looking at doing that next pour?
I don't have a date yet. Obviously, these last couple days they've been out in the mornings doing some plowing, so that it does pull them away from that, hopefully by Thursday or Friday.
I'd like to come out, take a look when they're doing that.
Usually they try and schedule it right around 9 a.m. It's usually when they're pouring, but I'll be in touch when we get an actual date set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You was in her adult grade.
Anyone else? Yes.
I just wanted to report real quick, because the question had come up a couple of times about whether the county could include additional information in the budget property tax mailers that went out. I
Yes.
did check with the Department of Management yesterday and was told no.
Surprise, surprise. Okay, thank you very much, and thanks for checking. Any other updates? Any online updates? Hearing none, move on to item 6, minutes approved for January 27th, 2026.
So moved. Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, minutes are approved. Item 7 is the consent agenda. The following items are acted upon by a single resolution unless someone wishes to just remove an item for discussion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Please answer as your name is called.
Grant?
Yes.
Kurtenbach?
Yes.
Schwartz?
Yes.
Leyland?
Yes. Item 8, other business. Motion that the travel request submitted by Rich Kurtenbach, County Supervisor, be approved and direct the chair to sign for same cost of $2,387 to attend the Cedar Valley Coalition visit in Washington, D.C. on March 3rd through the 5th, 2026.
Folks, I'd like to table this issue right now. The meeting last week and with the possibility of the government shutdown, I want people to understand we rely a lot on the federal dollars, not just for our roads, but also for the health department. That was my focus in going, but at this point, I don't know if this would be prudent use of our funds. I have been convinced it is prudent to look ahead for us to be making this trip. But right now, I don't see this being prudent for our dollars to be used for that. So I'm just asking this be tabled at this point.
For a length of time, or are you just thinking for this year?
For this year.
This year. Okay, so, okay. Thank you, Rich.
As I go, that's been my experience on trips I went on last year with other entities. It's, I don't know how to put it politely, but it's a shit show in Washington DC. So, people not even making time to meet with constituents and everything, so.
Do you want a motion to table this, or do you just want to let it die for lack of a motion?
I would think you just wait till, if you're thinking next year, if
Yeah.
we're tabling it, I think to go later, but you're not.
No, not at this point.
Item number B, discussion and possible board action to approve sending postcard notifications to all Blackhawk County households, informing them of the division of the county into supervisor districts, along with issuing a press release regarding that change.
I think to avoid like any further like confusion, we've got pending, court case still out there that's supposed to be decided in March. And I don't wanna send something out and then have to send something out again. And so I think we should wait until that's been decided.
And the problem with that, Chris, is like we discussed last week, is we got an election still gotta happen, whether we like it or not. And Karen gave us some numbers last week. When I asked for this in the agenda, I didn't have the number amount, so that's why I left it for discussion. But with questions I've heard just this past week, there's people out there still don't realize that we've been broken up into districts.
Yeah.
So this would be a notification for them to each household, not to each voter, to eliminate that cost and get it down lower.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I think that the end of March would still be plenty of time for June for people to be educated. I just think about how confusing it would be if this case, does, maintain the districts, and then we've got to communicate this all again.
So you're meaning that judgment call on
Yeah.
litigation, and so that is still pending
Still
as far as we
pending.
know it, so that could come through, so at least maybe go week to week or try another week or so just to see and
Yeah.
confirm something, because unfortunately Mike's not here and had to work with the assessor's office this morning, so he was gonna be late here to even see if there was an update on anything. That's, I don't know if there has been, but that would have been the time to ask him too, just in case we heard anything.
Should we wait a couple weeks, Chris, then, and
Yeah.
visit this then? I don't wanna wait too long, cause we have to start getting in campaign mode.
Yeah, in
I
front of
want
people.
folks to
and letting
understand
people
what's
watch.
going on.
Some of us are back a year later, so yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll discuss that next week, perhaps, or the next couple weeks. Well, moving on to item 9, work session, consideration of all aspects of the fiscal year 27 Blackhawk County budget. Item 1 is the medical examiner, Dr. Mark Fisher. He's here today. Thank you very much for coming.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
As mentioned, I'm your county medical examiner. I'd like to give just a little bit of background for our organization, since it's a little different than most of yours. We're on 24/7, covering the whole county. Myself and Angela Fuller covered the county from Sunday midnight till Thursday midnight, and then my investigators break up the rest of the time on their own schedule and cover weekends. With each case that we have, we don't charge for being on call, we just charge per case. So that's per call that we do. The investigator on call has to determine whether this is a complete case or if it's going to be a deferred case. That is something that they get from the information that the caller gives us. A complete case means that we will go out to the site, we will talk to the family initially, then we will do a evaluation of the body. We talk to any authorities that are present, which would be DCI, police, Blackhawk County Sheriffs, and if none of those are present, we'll talk to the ambulance people to get our information. Then we go back and talk to the family again to try and get just a little bit more information. One of the things we do try and get is if they have a funeral home available. If they do use a funeral home, we go ahead and we'll release the body if that's appropriate. And the funeral home will transport it back away. If the family does not pick a funeral home, we will arrange to have the body transported to Mercy One morgue where we store our bodies until the families do come up with a funeral home. Before we do that, we have to actually call the house supervisor to make sure that this is appropriate and they will take the body. And that's usually not a case. If it happens to go to an autopsy, we're looking at something totally different. We have to arrange for transportation to Ankeny, which is where all of our autopsies are done. We then have to call Ankeny and let them know what's coming their way. And then that's pretty much where we're at as far as autopsies are concerned. So far this year, we've done roughly about 700 cases that were called on. Half of those have been complete cases, and the other half are roughly deferred cases. With a deferred
When you say
case,
700, Doctor, you mean since July to this date, or do
it's
this year?
a calendar year.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah, I don't do the July.
all right, thank you.
The deferred cases, we also have to develop a case history so that we can put that into the computer system at the state and at the city. The first complete cases are billed out as $200 per case. The deferred cases are $50 per case. And there's a third billing, which is $90, which is a processing fee that I turn in. I evaluate each of the cases once the investigators are done. I review them and sign off on those. That includes not only the investigative cases, but the deferred cases. So that's about 700 cases again that I look at and process. We also will put those into the computer at the city here. So now we have roughly about 9 years of cases in there so that we can refer back to it if needed. We also process all of the autopsies. They come to me in a paper form. So I have to switch those over to a computer type electronic system. And then I put that into, I label them and put them into the system so that we can combine those with our investigations. I don't charge for any of that time. That's on my own time. And I don't charge for any of the deferred cases. I only bill out for actual cases that were investigated. So, any questions on any of that?
Do you guys respond, this is gonna be a stupid question, I know. Do you guys respond to care facilities and things like that? Because I've only seen you out on suspicious cases. But somebody asked me that last night, as far as, do you guys go to hospitals, nursing facilities and places like that?
There's some cases that are required by us to go out on. Of course, those are homicides, suicides, accidental deaths, unexpected deaths, that's a big one. We actually go out on almost all of the emergency room deaths because people don't come to the emergency room to die. You know, they expect that they're going to survive. So those are unexpected. We have to go out on all of the home deaths because, unless they're hospice calls or something like that, because we're required to have a report on that also. Nursing homes, if it's someone who's been under care, we will not go out unless there's been some sort of an incident, like somebody falls out of bed and cracks their head open or something like that. We would go out on those. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't go to the nursing homes.
Did I understand you correctly, that there's two people that really work kind of like full-time hours, and then the others
Well,
are?
no. During the weekdays, basically, we cover the entire county, okay? So we split it up on the east side, west side, okay? I take all the calls on the west side. Angela Fuller takes the calls on the east side. And then during the weekends, the one person takes the whole works. So we're made up of 5 individuals, myself, Angela Fuller, who was a nurse practitioner. Actually, she was a PA at my clinic, and she's been with us for 10 years. There was Tara Duncan, who was the head of emergency services, the emergency room over at Sartori. She's been with us for 10 years. Jason Hernandez is in charge of ambulance services for the Morgan Fire. And then the new member is my granddaughter, Madeline. She started in December. She's a EMT over at Mercy One. And, since starting in December, she's been out on about a dozen cases so far. So. Questions on that?
Thank you.
As far as the budget, good.
So this has been an increasing expense for every year since I've been here. Been trying to get it up just to where we think it needs to be. So I pretty much try to meet the prior year budget. This year, I'm about that, maybe a little bit more, because we are seeing more need for autopsies, and the cost of autopsies has risen too. So we've been pleasantly surprised. We're not getting charged. We have not had, a lot of price increases for transporting the bodies by Mercy One or funeral homes. They both do that. Fortunately, we're not seeing a lot, and it just, this budget's controlled by what happens in the county, really nothing under our control. Dr. Bigley's fees haven't changed since 2020, I believe, so that's.
So the cost of autopsies now, you say, is kind of risen as well.
It has over time. It's leveled out per individual autopsy right now, but so it just depends on how many we have to have done.
At the present time, we had about 106 autopsies this last year, the calendar year. And they can run anywhere from 2,500 to up into the 3,000 range each autopsy. And that is totally out of our hands. I have no control of that. And as mentioned, Mercy One does transport for us for the majority of the cases. They're $416 every case that they send out. And the funeral homes, we are required from the state to pay their fees, and that can run from $200 to $300 each transport. Again, all of these things are out of our control.
The only comment we have for this one?
It's pretty straightforward. We do budget a little bit for office supplies and expenses. Dr. Bigley has had to replace a fax machine or, things like that, but nothing else.
When we set the budget, do we anticipate ballpark how many autopsies for the next?
Actually, they've been running pretty regular. This year was 106, last year was 120, the year before 176, so it's somewhere around that area. I don't expect it to be too much more, but we don't know.
I think that's been kind of the issue for so many years. It's just like you try to hit those marks as best you can, and you have to live with what you get.
I'm hoping maybe they're going to level off or even decline a little bit now. Maybe they rose in that COVID, post-COVID period. We can hope.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, sir.
All right, next up, we're going to talk with our planning and zoning folks. See Eric Strader here from the city of Waterloo.
Hey, welcome.
Works on that. Gallman's also here. So we have two.
Good morning, Eric Schrader. I'm the city planner for the city of Waterloo and supervise the professional services agreement that the city of Waterloo has with Blackhawk County, which covers planning and zoning services, building permits and inspection services, and then code enforcement services for the unincorporated areas of Blackhawk County. That agreement provides for us to bill for costs incurred, and it is written to essentially cover our costs, and those costs are offset by the permits and fees that we collect, and generally speaking, that is a revenue producer for Blackhawk County. How much our expenses are and how much our revenues are really does ebb and flow, and we've had years, quite a few years ago, but years where we did start to see the revenue not keeping pace with the expense, so we had to do some adjustments on some of the fee structures, permits, and whatnot. And for the last quite a few years, I think we've been pretty consistent where we have been pulling in more in revenue than the expenses being billed. On a budgeting standpoint, it's usually only budgeted that the revenue will be a little bit over the expenses. I think most of the actuals end up being a good little bit more than that, but because you never know what projects you're going to have, you never know what rezones requests, how many building permits you're going to get, it really can kind of ebb and flow. So I think the proposal that Michelle has put before you, does it show a 7.2% increase, but again, it's still showing revenue proposed to exceed expenses. So, we oversee the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Adjustment, which cover most of our input requests for rezones, plats, things like that. Just looking back at fiscal year 2025, we had 13 rezone requests, 6 minor plats, 2 commercial site plan reviews, 1 special permit, and 6 variances. So, not a ton of requests, but rezones tend to be the most common one that we'll see, and it kind of ebbs and flows. So, happy to take any questions you have.
On the fines, it appears that people are pretty well obeying, it seems, if we don't have much revenue coming in from that. I assume that's for not getting a work permit or something, right? And then you get caught probably?
More than likely it would be under code enforcement for a citation that was issued. It certainly could be on the permit side, but regardless whether you're on the zoning side, the building side, or the code enforcement side, fines are always the last resort.
Right.
So we will work closely with property owners to try to do everything we can to address the situation without it involving a fine.
It is, so for 24, there was 0 for fines. That means a lot of compliance. So
Yeah.
I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Eric? Thanks for coming another day. Good to see you again.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you. Item 30, County Attorney. Brian Wood.
Yep, we're ready for you, Brian.
Good morning, Board. Brian Williams, Blackhawk County Attorney. You want to start with fines? With your spreadsheet on fines.
The last page in your packets for most.
Okay.
So for the newer board, members of the board, fine collection has been, and when I say fine collection, I need to clarify what that is. It's delinquent court debt. It's fluctuated. When I first started, the state took it away from us for a year. Got it back. There's constant discussion about them taking it back again. We ultimately have to meet a threshold. The county gets 28%, the county attorney gets 5%. Once you hit, I think it's 250,000. We usually hit that in about 3 months or so, and it's stayed pretty steady. A couple years ago, I want to say about 5-6 years ago, there was an interpretation of how we collect fines, what is collectible and what is can and may be forgiven. About a year after that, they changed the statute, so it's pretty clarified now in terms of essentially what we call reasonable ability to pay. Hasn't had an impact, and I need to emphasize a couple of things here. One, with delinquent court debt, one, it doesn't change our jobs in terms of prosecution. If the law allows for a criminal offense to be suspended, which means not enforced, we agree to it. Right? But there are some offenses like traffic tickets, like OWIs. There's a few others that you can't waive the fee. We always agree to the minimum, even if it's not waivable. So it's not something that impacts us in terms of what the fines we ask, because it, quite frankly, might not end up being delinquent. We wouldn't collect it anyway. It wouldn't be ours. From that, though, we've had an evolution of there's been laws passed for what we call the driver reinstatement program. Which back in the old days, right, if you were suspended until that fine was paid off. Now they can come in, do a payment plan, we contact the DOT, they get their driver's license back. So we do a lot of that. So that's, face-to-face contact with individuals from the public. But regardless, I bring that up only to say that this debt is there whether we collect or not. But this isn't, there are some things that enforce it. The courts are enforcing this, not us. So it's there regardless. So it's remained steady through my 10 years now. Always fearful that they'll take it away. I've been told there's nothing this year. But because it's so fragile in terms of whether we'll maintain it or not, I gotta keep an eye on the balance of this. And one of the things I noticed during the course of budgeting is paying for this deputy. I did this. I think I came to the board 2020, I believe it was, when I had a prosecutor attacked in a courtroom. The individual was out of custody. Thankfully, deputies were there because we had an inkling something was going to happen. So they were there, but it got really dicey there. So I think I did it for the right reasons. I think I had the support of the court and ultimately the support of the board. And by no means am I suggesting that because I don't feel comfortable paying this, that things have changed in this courthouse, because they have not changed. They've gotten far worse. I did call a couple judges yesterday. I spoke to, Supervisor Hall yesterday just to get their permission to talk a little bit about, Supervisor Hall was terrorized. He and his family were terrorized for quite some time. Had a judge that was stalked, and he was ultimately convicted of stalking her. I have a judge now who is essentially being stalked or harassed, and getting emails to the extent of, I know where your husband works. And so that being said, at the same time, I think this came up in a different board meeting, which is this isn't limited to criminal cases. In fact, I think it's quite opposite. I think it's our eviction cases are getting more tense. Our family laws are really tense. Guardianship cases, which like there's money involved, are getting really intense. I spoke to Supervisor Brandt just informally for a couple minutes, and by the time I got to the third floor, there was a lady screaming so loud that the floor was shaking. And deputies had to be called up there. So I don't want to lose that, and I'm fearful because I think they have served their purpose. We haven't had an incident like the one I described since January of 2020. But there is a lot to be considered here. And I just want the board to be aware that when I look at my bottom line here, and it's eaten my entire 5%. Each and every year I have to do something. Also, subsequent to my discussion with this board in 2020, the law did change. And the law said, well, if you're going to keep firearms out of the courthouse, you got to have armed guards and screening devices. But I still thought this was a noble cause. I still do. I just want to keep an eye on what this is. But overall, our collections maintain constant. I mean, they're consistent from year to year. I just grabbed a couple fiscal years, and they're almost identical. You can almost, April's a big month, and then you get a couple months that are down. But I'm happy to answer any questions about that, about fine collection in general. But I just kind of wanted to, again, kind of explain what fine collection, delinquent court debt is, and our collection of that.
This is, the fine collection, or court fines is gonna be based on criminal conviction, part of the sentencing? So there's like, in the triple I's, there's X number dollar fine.
I would say most are simple misdemeanors.
Okay.
So some of those won't hit a triple I. So most of the fines that are assessed are traffic or unified citation and complaints, where the fine cannot be suspended, or simple misdemeanors, where we don't really impose jail on simple misdemeanors, depends. But then you have to do one or the other.
Right.
So usually they just get fines. Those would be primarily the ones we collect. And I did fail to mention that a big part of fine collection also is collecting victim restitution, which is not divided here. And when it's collected, it immediately goes to the victim. By law, the victim has to be the first one paid. So we're collecting victim restitution as well. But yes, to answer your question, yeah, but a lot of them, if you're talking virtually all felonies, there's not going to be a fine imposed, or if it is, it's suspended. It's really simple as in traffic.
Do you think that's, my little personal philosophy is either take people's time. Like for the felonies, a lot of them need to be sitting in jail, is my belief. So do they waive the fines in lieu of spending time in jail, prison?
No.
Or is it
No,
just?
because for anything above a serious misdemeanor, essentially, you have to do both. You have to give probation, jail, prison, deferred, but you also have to do a fine. And in most cases, this fine, the judge will say, here's an $855 fine, but I'm suspending it. So it's not in lieu of anything. It's just in addition to whatever else happens. But even when we go to trial and are successful, we'll still recommend that the fine be suspended. I mean, it's just how it's been since I've been here, but I just kind of wanted the board to be, we're not imposing fines just so we can ultimately collect it. That's not what we're doing here, so.
Brian, has there ever been any, I don't want to say push or requests that the state start helping with security in the courtrooms?
Not to my knowledge.
Because it seems is we want the legal system to work, and knowing that there's an unknown out there, security should be part of, whether we have judges or clerks or the whole 9 yards of PR, security should be part of that as well.
Well, I would think the obstacle would be that there are so many counties who don't care. They don't have it. That would be my hunch. But if you go to Scott County, you go to Dubuque County, it's like you're going through an airport. And, take your belt off and all kinds of stuff. So, not to my knowledge, and I don't know the incentive there. I think that's part of the reason why they passed the 724 with regard to armed guards and screening devices. And say you don't have to have it if you don't want it. So what do we do? The last thing I will note with regard to fine collection that I should have mentioned was, for years, we used a lot of these, the 5% that came to my account, we used that for courthouse renovation, courtroom, I call it renovation, but it's usually, technology that we used to have to, because no one else would do it, we just play chicken, and okay, well, somebody's got to do it. They have since renovated, the state has renovated virtually, I think, all courtrooms now, so that's not an expense that I anticipate for years to come, and don't have to, I do have one courtroom left, but if there is maintenance issues, that would be on us, but the rest are all the states. So that's been a huge benefit to us.
I just want to have a better understanding. So of the court fine pie, the county gets 28%, your office specifically gets 5%, and then that remaining 67% goes to the state?
Yes.
Okay.
So if it's, one has got to be delinquent though, because if it's not delinquent, it's
Right.
all going to the state. If it's delinquent and we begin to collect, then that's when that division happens. And then I don't get the 5% until we hit, it's either 150 or 250, they kind of fluctuate a little bit.
And so they're given a time period where they have to have these fines paid?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Or given a monthly fee, or a monthly payment,
All right.
which I think at minimum has to be 50. So if they're consistent with that, then we don't see it.
Okay. So then that 5% equates to $70,000
Yeah,
for your
roughly.
office, and of that 70,000 to support security deputies, you're giving all of that
Yeah.
towards that $115,000.
Yes. Yep.
So today, you're still intending to include that item, but making us very much aware that.
No, I'm suggesting that I remove it, that I not be responsible for that 115,000. And I'm sorry if I wasn't clear about that, but it's, it wasn't an easy decision. I just didn't want you to think by me saying that I think everything's great here.
No, that's good.
Security,
No, the environment we're in, it's certainly.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification.
But again, any other questions about fine collection?
Want to talk about your statistics?
What's that?
Want to talk about your statistics or no?
Oh, I mean, I can't see that, but, and I don't know. Yeah. Oh, it's right in front of me, jeez. Thanks, Al. These are just our raw numbers here. Can be a bit of a misnomer, particularly as this does not include serious misdemeanors and simple misdemeanors, which I'm going to talk about in a second, as it pertains to discovery. But that's our biggest bulk, our simples and serious. I mean, it's thousands and thousands of cases. Simples are cases that come to our office, and that includes traffic, that we don't see those cases until a person says, hey, I'm going to plead not guilty. Otherwise, we don't see it. Like a traffic ticket. Someone gets a traffic ticket on the interstate today, and they just pay it. I mean, it would ultimately be our responsibility, but if they just pay it, we don't see it. That includes a lot of, patrol cases for like disorderly conduct, public intox, things like that. That if they just come in and tell the judge, I want my fine, we don't see it. But there's still a huge bulk. And then serious misdemeanors are just one step above. We do see those because we're required to indict on those. And that would be probably by itself, I would say 2,000 by itself. So we're looking in the 6,000 range. So, I mean, if there's questions, I'm happy to answer any questions about that, but it remains, unfortunately. Can you go back, Michelle, real quick?
Yeah.
So I did mention that serious misdemeanors are not on here. Serious misdemeanors does include possession of controlled substances, which with our diversion court that we have, it's a pre-diversion or pre-indictment diversion program, meaning you come in, you do what you're supposed to do, we don't even charge you. So that number, we've been doing that for 2.5 years. I've been meaning to present to the board on that. I probably will at some point. I mean, we've covered probably 2,000 cases just in that alone. So those numbers wouldn't necessarily be reflected. But I'll be honest with you, it shouldn't be reflected because we don't administer the program. We're just there as a warm body. And if they do everything they're supposed to do, and we've had a good success rate, that they're not going to pop up in the volume of cases necessarily.
Brian, something I just want to bring up that I feel like does have some relevance here. Do you remember a couple years back, we had a brief discussion on just the general cost of prosecution?
Yep.
And just for like I guess imagine like a Walmart theft, for example. And do you remember what you maybe estimated what that cost to prosecute was when you factor in all the hands that are touching?
It would be night and day if there was a trial and if there wasn't a trial.
Yeah.
That would be night and day difference. Because if somebody steals a candy bar from Walmart, that could be a 3.5 day trial. I mean, do that math, right? Or it could be done in a week and a half, just by itself, done. So I do remember having a discussion. I don't remember.
It was like $750 to $1,000 on the low end for like a 5th degree theft. So I think if people knew, like, and this went back to when we were discussing like prevention, the cost of prevention versus other methods and so forth. When I was accused of being a liberal at one time, but anyway, it's fascinating when you think like how expensive it is to use the justice system.
Yeah, I mean, I've been crying for 20 years that our sentencing scheme lacks so much creativity. I mean, I've kind of described it here a little bit, just in terms of here are your options. That's all we have. So I wish there were many more facets to it that would induce certain things and change behavior, and we get some of that, we do. But if we had more options, if we could get the mental health component, which is the biggest issue that we have by far, if we could include some type of mental health within prosecution or treatment, we're talking completely different ballgame there.
Right.
But it's that terrible disconnect that exists, particularly in this state, unfortunately. I'm sorry. I was talking about the other potential position. Is that okay? I am down 3 full-time attorneys. Last year, I came to speak to the board when we talked having the Axon conversation and how it's worked wonders for me, and it has. It's and particularly now, when more and more departments are utilizing it. The one downside to that is it is quite a bit more work for us. I had mentioned simple and serious misdemeanors, so we're in the thousands there. And the downside, which again, I'm not complaining, but the upside's fantastic. The downside is if a defense attorney doesn't have to do anything to get it, they're going to ask for it. Fine. But back in the old days, they were a little more judicious. They'd ask for it if they really needed it. But we take simple misdemeanors, and we're in the thousands. Assume 2/3 of those go away, we still have 1/3. That is primarily dealing with unrepresented people, so we have to share discovery with unrepresented people, which has been a major headache for us, particularly on their end when they receive it and they don't know what to do with it. And then for serious and aggravated misdemeanors, it's been very cumbersome to comply with discovery. My solution, I think, is I had envisioned a 15-hour-a-week job that would be what I call a discovery coordinator or a discovery compliance officer. It would be, I'd still need to, I think, get with Amanda. And, it would be, again, 15 hours a week. They would do all the discovery compliance. We talked about this. It came quick, but it kind of dawned on us here about December when things start bottlenecking because of the holidays and the upcoming time off. That things that were like, we need a better solution, particularly for those misdemeanor prosecutors, because I'd spend myself hours just getting videos, sending them, getting videos, sending them, and I'm just one person. You consider everybody else, but we had envisioned a 3-hour-a-week job. It would probably be for someone who's retired who just wants to stay busy. Would be a big part of this compliance, because currently it's the attorneys that do it, not the support staff. So that was just my, because if you look, and I don't know if this, we're down 3 full-time. We've made up for it a little way because Mike became full-time, and then we added a part-time civil attorney who also, she does post-conviction relief, so she does some of these videos as well. That she's .8, I think we said. So I was hoping to kind of round that out and then add this .36 just to kind of lighten the load a little bit with regard to discovery compliance. So certainly not complaining. Things are way better than they used to be, but it is a little more busy work that we have to do.
So because of discovery, so somebody wants to represent themselves, and they do a discovery request, and then you guys have to hold their hand and walk them through what to do with it.
Some of them.
What?
So keep in mind, the ones I'm referring to are not people who have chosen to represent themselves. They're people who are charged with a simple or traffic, and they're not otherwise entitled to an attorney. There's exceptions to that, but you run-of-the-mill traffic offenses, simple misdemeanors, they say, hey, I want my trial. All right, here, can I get your email? I'm going to send you the discovery. And then we get the phone call on the back end saying it won't work for me, which, so.
Okay, so it's not, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I have a better understanding. I thought it was something different that was wild.
No, it's not, it could come up in other contexts, but it's primarily people who just don't qualify for an attorney because they're not looking at simple misdemeanors. It's just a lot of them, I can't get it to work because they're trying to download it on their phone. And so we try to help them the best we can. We'll tell them then come down and we'll download it for you. It's just time. It's just time consuming.
And then you said 15, go through the numbers again. Was it 3 hours or 15 hours a week?
It would be 3 hours a day.
Okay.
For 15 hours.
Gotcha.
And that's, we really tried to crunch the numbers. We're not embellishing in any way. I think that's about perfect, to be honest with you, in terms of the time it would take. Because a lot of times it's just waiting, emailing. Not so much with Waterloo. It's the other agencies that we have to request the videos and wait. And then, not to mention the non-Axon entities that all do it differently. So I did. We are in, before Axon, we used a thing called iCrime Fighter, which is how we share videos. It was great for storage, it was difficult for sharing. And I paid a portion, Sheriff's Office paid a portion, Cedar Falls and Waterloo all paid a portion. Well, now that they have Axon, they don't want it anymore. So I'm currently in negotiations with them about how they want to do that. It was about $2,500 to $3,000 a year So I'm trying to kind of keep them at that. I think that they're willing to discuss that, so we still need it for certain things. But it's just basically storage is all that is.
You mentioned, Brian, like really trying to, this discovery coordinator kind of lighten the load because you are like 3 full-time attorneys
Right.
now. I know probably to think to be at full capacity is probably something that's kind of that goal to try to get those 3 filled. But if that were to happen, does that mean you don't need the position then? I mean, obviously it could always be helping and assisting.
I wouldn't, I think in a perfect world, looking ahead, all departments are gonna be on the same page. And they're all gonna do it the same way. The waiting game doesn't exist, and I think this is all possible. That this position, the position I'm speaking to the board about now would not be needed. Because it would be, the time consumption would be far less. That's kind of what I'm thinking. And again, I'm anticipating this is somebody who's retired, they don't wanna do it for a year or 2, and then we'll kind of revisit. So no, I'm not necessarily conceding that, but I thought it was just kind of, would kind of offset some of that time that's used for discovery.
So looking at a part-time position with that, then it wouldn't really be a benefit, position with benefits, just like you said, somebody that maybe has some
Yeah.
time, wants to stay active and.
I was estimating the total cost of that to be about $26,000 a year if they meet them the full 15 hours a week.
And that would be determined to be like an hourly position, like you might not need
Yeah.
them some weeks or whatever.
Yeah, I think I consider it like on the GS-13 scale. Like currently, what our what I call case administrator, I think it's a law enforcement liaison. They are more than 15 hours, but it would be essentially consistent with that, but less hours.
The wage. Mhm. Okay. Thank you.
Could we, on the fine collection stuff, as we've discussed, enhancing courtroom security and very likely, I think everybody knows where I stand on that, like, if we're able to just have armed security here, and it's obviously going to cost more money, but would you be willing to, could we negotiate maybe on somewhere in between on that $70,000 to maybe help out with that?
Yeah, we certainly can negotiate. I mean, I'm still hoping that maybe at some point I might need to pay for a place for a year. I don't know if I've mentioned that we don't love our basement.
Right.
That's been my thought, is that I wouldn't ask the board, particularly if we found a place for temporary that I'd need to utilize those funds for, that I would do that.
Gotcha.
But I know that's to go off-site's expensive, and I understand it's difficult decisions to be made here. But yes, to answer your question, yes, I'd be willing to negotiate that, sure.
Is that your office location, is that something that's gonna be discussed during budget session at any point in time, or?
Well, and again, I haven't had too many conversations lately. I think the most likely and probably understandable solution would be an existing county building. I don't know what that is, and I don't know what that looks like, but it's kind of, we looked at a location offsite. I figured out that there'd be some significant costs associated with that. And then we went back to discussion about whether the county, obtains new property. I don't know, obviously. If there is an existing county or somewhere within the courthouse would be also most likely. We have had those conversations, so.
Something still, yeah.
I'm sorry?
Something to continue, obviously, because we understand.
Yeah, no, I know you do, and the board's been very receptive, and I appreciate it very much.
Maybe still have that during the budget session, some discussion about that, I guess.
Yeah.
Just to see.
Whenever you,
Yeah, thank you. Get everybody involved that needs to be.
so his This includes the proposed budget, his total salaries are up 6%. Revenue is actually down primarily because of reducing the use of the restricted funds. When we budgeted for 26, we also budgeted for the furniture and a full deputy and some other things, so we're trying to bring that down, but we just can't get it below 70 right now. Operating expenses, he's got a slight increase, 8,500. Most of that is due to software that they use. We did take out, we had been planning to use 20,000 of the fine collection for painting. We've taken that out till we figure out what direction we're really going.
And in my defense, that was never my idea. That was,
Oh, come on.
that was thrust upon me. I didn't ever say anything like that. There might have been a former supervisor who forced me to do it.
Could be, I don't remember.
Could you just talk a little bit about the interpreter expense?
That would be, most interpreter expenses are covered by the state, so any formal court proceeding.
Yeah.
Deposition trial. If we can find them, and that's a horrible situation right now. That's covered by the state. But when we have victims who don't speak English, or we need something transcribed, whether it be sometimes we have done letters in the past, but we also need, if we need to communicate, say we get body cam video, although you guys do the best you can to do it, we may need it formally transcribed, so we would sometimes utilize it for that.
And the software, I was gonna say, that is something that you have to purchase? That's the ongoing expenses, or that's just something in the computer?
If you look at the, 25, you can see that was substantially more. And 26, has got some in there that it, of course, the judicial stuff. The name is escaping.
So this is our most expensive, this is our judicial dialogue. So this is our case management system that we use. Instead of using paper files, we have files within our case management system that we've had that since, I think we've had it since '09, long before me. We've had discussions, I was up before the board a couple weeks ago talking about the fine collection MOU that we were contemplating, and there was some discussion during that process about switching over to a different case management system. I think Al knows better than I do, but it would have been a lot more than what we're paying now, and it's just too much of an undertaking to switch, I believe. But that's probably our most essential expense.
The large increase in the salary and wages, is that just wages, a new position, or is that more of just increase across the board what you have?
Yeah, I think just across the boards, right?
It is
Across the boards are the steps.
plus the 26,000 for the potential position that he's requested, but it's mostly just
Okay.
the steps. Might have had a change, I think there was a change in health insurance too. I heard someone new that took family rather than single, so that makes a difference.
On the juvenile, and I know we passed this, but on the juvenile court side, how are things in general going over there? Just talking about cases, case numbers, et cetera. I mean, it just seems, from my view, where I happen to work, that there's a lot more serious juvenile stuff going on.
So the serious juvenile stuff is gonna be in those numbers,
Yeah.
the serious ones. And keep in mind, when we say juvenile, we mean two different things. We mean delinquency, which are, by definition, are crimes that committed by an adult that don't go to adult court, which is most of them. In fact, most don't even come to our office. if someone arrests a juvenile, might say for a theft, it's probably staying over at JCS and never coming to us. But there are some that do come to us. The bulk and the most time-consuming part of juvenile court is the child in need of assistance cases, which are, potentially a removal from the home and trying to reunify parents with children, and our involvement with HHS or formerly DHS. That's the bulk of the juvenile that we do. Is we represent the state in those cases in juvenile court, where presumably mom has an attorney, dad has an attorney, the child may have a guardian ad litem. That's our involvement there. That's much more involved in the delinquency part of things. But to answer your question, if you're a juvenile and if you're over 16 or over and you commit what we call a forcible felony, they say robbery, murder, sex abuse, you start in adult court. So that kind of thing would be in those numbers.
Okay.
But the run-of-the-mill garden variety, arrest a 15-year-old for smoking pot, it's never going to come to my office.
Anyone else have questions? Sorry, Brian, anything that you may not have mentioned you want to bring back?
I'm sure there is.
We'll get a second round. More things come up later.
I've said this last year, and I don't know what time got away from me, but I do want to ultimately, and maybe it would be on during different sessions, I do want to come up and talk about specialty courts and stuff, so the board's kind of aware of where those, what we do, where they're going, and the benefits of those, so.
Where do you think they are going?
I think they're fantastic.
You think they're going well here in the use of them, as
Yeah.
far as like not seeing some of them curtailed, or you mean not that?
I think, well, I don't want to take too much of your time, but we have, without doubt, I think we have more specialty courts than anybody in the state. We have our diversion court, we have our drug court, we have our family, family treatment court. I don't know how I messed that up. We have our rocket docket court, which is getting people their license back, the driver's license. We're going to have a driving while barred, something or other. I don't know what that looks like. And strong prospect, we're, knock on wood, this year we'll have a veterans court. We've been having that discussion for some time. There's someone that's willing to administer it, which is 3/4 of the battle on a lot of these specialty courts. And I was always fearful that we didn't have the numbers, but I was shown different. So, and I briefly talked to Yolanda about that because he wanted to be involved. So there'll be further discussion about that. But I can't promise this year. But that's my hope.
Do you have any more to share on this budget? Any questions? Thanks very
Thank you.
much. Thanks very much.
So, my question for the board is, we could jump to civil service and compensation before all the board activities, but it's just your choice.
Sure.
Whichever you'd rather do first.
That's fine. Civil service and, if you're saying compensation are both with Amanda.
Yeah. Thought she might want to get it over with.
Yeah. Great. The civil service budget, so this is probably maybe the smallest budget for the county, is that fair? Possibly.
One of them,
One
yeah.
of the smallest, so, and really it's carried out under Iowa code requirements as to how we test for deputy sheriff, for promotional tests such as sergeant and lieutenant, and then some of the just things that go on with supporting the Civil Service Commission, which is made up of 3 commissioners. So this does not change very often. The main thing that we spend expenses on are going to be pre-employment testing for applicants for the position of deputy sheriff. and some of my time, I suppose, in proctoring the exams, and getting those lists prepared. So, it's really just a support kind of budget. I do the agendas, the minutes, maintain the certified list that the commission certifies that send to the sheriff. The sheriff does a lot of the heavier lifting when it comes to the actual onboard or selection process. I primarily handle just the written exam that is required for candidates that apply for deputy sheriff. Captain or Chief Deputy Taronis handles all the physical agility tests now. That was something I used to have to do, but kind of brought that under the sheriff's office to handle those. And when it comes to recruiting for deputies, we've had some changes in how we've previous years we used to hold like 2 tests a year, maybe 3, and we've really now changed that to an ongoing testing format, which is similar to what we see a lot of other law enforcement agencies. So not really much to change here. I did get permission from the commission to have Anna and Cherry of our office also do some of the post testing, just with that ongoing open testing window. We're pretty responsive to applicants as to when they can fit their written exam in, but it does take about 2 hours for us to do it each time. So I'm just trying to utilize them a little bit more in this process. But I don't have a lot to add to this. I mean, Michelle, do you have anything else?
No, it's a pretty simple little budget, yep.
Yeah, and I didn't make any changes because we've seen the pre-employment testing cost has gone down a little. That's mostly because we have detention officers that go through their pre-employment testing and then apply for, like, basically it's a promotion or opportunity to be promoted into deputy. So we see that those costs are not covering the full cost of their pre-employment because they've already done a portion of it with the sheriff's office in their current role, civilian detention officer. But
It's all included in the advertising and publishing.
it's a lot of times just things that we push out on LinkedIn or social media that it's not a huge budget. So sometimes we used to do like subscriptions and things like that out to one of our commissioners like to send things out in certain military magazines. With social media being Indeed being such a powerhouse of recruitment, that's where some of those resources go. But Sheriff's Office is also recruiting for these, so it's not like this is their only budget. This is just kind of specific to maybe we put in the paper. We haven't really needed to use it a ton. I think I used some of it for billboards on occasion, but maybe we need to boost this on Indeed because we aren't seeing much of a response. Or sometimes Gabby, if she runs something, there could be a cost to that, so we'll pitch in for that. But no, they spend, actually Sheriff's Office spends this. I mean, with those campaign videos that are coming, they paid that portion for the deputies and the positions they're trying to recruit for out of sheriff's budget, not out of here, so.
It's simple now, in fact, there's some comments. It's not like that.
That was easy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is required by Iowa that there is a budget. I think at the most it can be is 1% of the sheriff's budget, I think I was told by, but that would be a bit, I think.
But what is the health services line?
That's likely the pre-employment, so like the physical, drug tests, yep, all of that, and that's where we've seen some of that go down because we're kind of recruiting from within. A lot of detention officers decide to apply, but it would be so we split those bills with them for nursing one. They used to, sorry, go ahead.
It was acknowledging.
Used to have to send in like postage, which we still have to do for like a promotional test. I have to send in I have to order the test from ILEA, send them in. That we used to also send in the test to Stannard and Associates. That's all now. We grade them ourselves, and we just send in the results of the scores and fax it over. But so some things have kind of changed in this that aren't really used as much, but with the And then some things remain, like the promotional test, I always have to print off the materials and then mail it back to ILEA and they actually score it, so. And we do those promotional tests usually every 2 years, or unless they exhaust before the 2 years, then we will have to advertise for that for current deputies or sergeants if they want to be considered for promotion and they take the exam. And if they pass, they get certified and promoted.
Got nothing further.
No, thank you. Okay. Moving on to compensation.
Yes, to compensation. Okay, so I do have just a brief presentation I'd like to. Everyone can see that hopefully. Okay. All right, so each year during the budget session, we talk about elected official and department head wages, as well as non-bargaining, because that is a requirement of the board, that they set the salaries, what it's called under Iowa code, I think salaries of like clerks, administration, things like that. Basically anyone who's not covered by a collective bargaining agreement. And then elected officials and percentage deputies fall under that. So this presentation is just going to do a quick overview of some past wage trends and how we compare to those trends. We're going to lightly touch on our comp study and where that's brought us to today, our competitive position today. Going to look at a couple of recommendations and then just revisit kind of our compensation strategy. So just going back to fiscal year 21, this was before we did any kind of comp study, and many of you, or some, oftentimes with the board, department heads are familiar with this chart. We really compare our wage, which you see Blackhawk County salaries up to the right in that column, compared to the market average, which is the top 10 counties excluding Polk County, and you can kind of get an idea with the color coding whether we're competitive or slightly misaligned. Those in green are highly competitive, those in yellow are considered competitive, and then the ones in red are potentially slightly misaligned, well, they are slightly misaligned or very misaligned. So anything that's like 15% below the market average is generally significantly misaligned, where we would need to be looking at equity adjustments. So this is what things look like in fiscal year 21. 2 years later, in fiscal year 23, we went backwards, so it got worse. So you can see, I think almost everyone but the IT director went up 1%, but every other department head position went down. And then for elected officials, I think we had maybe the attorney went up 1%, and otherwise they stayed the same, or in sheriff's case, it went down 3%. So you can kind of see of that. I guess recorder went up 9%, and board went up 1%. So that is what was kind of driving this need for looking at a comprehensive compensation study. I do think that department heads and elected official salaries are an indicator of really all of our salaries, because if it's at the top end misaligned, that just compresses misalignment throughout essentially the rest of the organization, because you're undoubtedly not paying managers and other staff higher than this. It kind of reflects the position of other roles. So when we did the compensation study, this came right out of Gallagher that performed the study. Their recommendations at that time, which was presented in January 2024, that said, based on the findings, the county is slightly misaligned with the external market. And that was a comprehensive study. It included all levels of jobs. It wasn't just specific to leadership or non-bargaining. It included union, many benchmark jobs that I think we had about 120 some job classifications, and it covered nearly 100 of those. So they recommended a salary structure adjustment that could be supported to bring the overall structure within a competitive range, which would be plus or minus 10% of the market. So you can see where we're kind of in the orange, where we were beyond 10 to upwards of 15. Some were yellow, where they were more than 15% misaligned. And we had some that were competitive, but overall we were slightly misaligned. So our goal was to get to that competitive, that green area. And we knew it was going to take some time. It was not something we could do overnight. So we did make some modifications both within the union negotiations as well as non-bargaining and for elected officials. So where we are today. According to that graph, and elected official pay is considered competitive, with the exception, of course, of the Board of Supervisors. That is the biggest disparity there, which we know is a little unique and quite the range for Board of Supervisors salary. If you're looking at communities such as Johnson County, Lynn County versus communities like Blackhawk, Dubuque, Woodbury, and the story kind of falls in the middle there. But that is today's number as of fiscal year 26. Please note that for the sheriff, we are required to include in the sheriff's market data figures for the Cedar Rapids Police Chief and the State of Iowa Department of Public Safety Administrator and Command positions, and we selected Public Safety Chief, Public Safety Executive Officer, and Public Service Executive. So that is only specific to the sheriff under Iowa Code, and that was a recent change. Department head pay is highly competitive. And so we are really meeting our goal here, what we set out to do with the comp study. You can see that majority of those are in the green, which would rank in that highly competitive within plus or minus 5% of the market average. And then a couple that are in the yellow are still competitive and close to being in that highly competitive range. I will say these numbers change every year. I think when I looked last year, I sent you all fiscal year 26. Sometimes someone's 95% and then they're 94%. And so it can fluctuate. A lot of that depends for department heads as to what those other communities do with pay, but also if they have a retirement or a resignation, they bring someone in new. That person that is working in Scott County may have 20 years of experience and they place that salary at that level, or they may have, they're more entry or maybe not as experienced in a director role, it's their first director role, and you would expect that to be somewhat below the market where they would grow into that. So it does change, but kind of going back to here too, I want to note that last column all the way to the right, ISAC statewide salary rank. Last year when I reported for elected officials, nobody was in the top 10, or being that we're the 5th largest county, we're in the top 10 largest counties that our salaries were not there still for elected officials, but this year with that 10% increase that was done a year ago, that positioned us well to now break through that top 10. And then you can see here where most of our department heads are in that 7, 8, 6. Kathy's is unique, the county engineer will say. There's like a dozen of them that are being paid $163,000 in smaller communities, so it's a little misleading to say that she's 19. That's kind of the going rate. It seems to be for county engineers right around that 160 to 170 range. There were some that just made $200 more than her, $500 more than her. So they're going to show that, yes, technically she's the 19th, but she's really within, you see her market is 97%. So, any questions about those two? That's where we, are today.
Not questions, but I was going to say a few weeks ago, Yolanda was here and was concerned about not so much his salary, he said, but future. And I think you sent us an email saying that you checked with ISAC and the numbers were incorrect, and so you corrected those.
Right.
So then this does this is where we are correctly aligned. It was just that number maybe that was skewed or something.
Yes.
That caused that.
Yep, I reached out to ISAC because my heart kind of sank when I heard that. Oh no, wait a second. But no, they did. It was reported incorrectly. ISAC calls it a veteran service officer, so they actually reported one of the veteran service officer roles. There's 2 of those, Michelle and Stacy in that office. Yolanda was also a veteran service officer, but I just confirmed that's really intended to be the director, and they said yes. So it was reported at like $67,000, but no, his salary is right in line with the market. It is lower than the others, and some of that's just the nature of the VA director, and that there are, 99 VA directors. One thing that I talked about with Yolanda though is, I don't have data as to some of the roles at like the VA hospital or like in Scott County, the VA center there, which kind of operate as this regional compared to maybe what Johnson County VA director does for the county. But no, based on the large top 10 counties, including Polk, that is aligned to the market. So,
thank you.
Yep. Okay. So recommendations for elected officials, looking at more of a moderate, like 4%. That would encompass and across the board. I think I noted also in my, in the document I sent to you that, and that also kind of accounts for merit, which department heads do receive merit, which I think has helped keep that momentum for them. Whereas elected officials really just kind of get the, whatever is decided by the comp board, which the board of supervisors now has taken on those responsibilities. But 4% for attorney, auditor, recorder, sheriff, and treasurer. Most of them being around that 91% would help sustain momentum from the 10% increase that was given last year. I do want to note, in looking back at adjustments, this board has been really responsive, especially to, sheriff's office. I know they had a 15% increase in fiscal year 23 for a sheriff and the command staff. They had a 9% increase in fiscal year 25, and then a 10% last year. They did, all elected officials got a 0 in the in-between year, but I think it's those types of actions that have helped position, like sheriff, where there's been a lot of volatility in their pay structures for law enforcement to kind of keep them moving in the right direction. This will help continue to close those remaining market gaps again, and really kind of look at that internal equity across leadership roles, seeing that we have department heads that are primarily in that highly competitive, looking to get the elected officials there as well. And it would also help us to avoid repeating an additional full 10%, in possibly consecutive years. There was a time when, with the comp board, where they would often make one recommendation for all elected officials and wouldn't really take into account the market changes per role, like attorney, like treasurer at any time, or sheriff. So, but now that we have kind of a better position, I would say that by doing the 4% or around there, you can kind of continue to keep up with the pace of that market. And then, of course, the last one is I am recommending prioritizing the board of supervisors due to that largest disparity, but that really ultimately is up to you. You see 7% there because the numbers just are what the numbers are. It's 62% to the market average, but that we recognize is a little, your roles are different necessarily than sheriff, recorder, auditor, treasurer, and even some of the department heads. But as for department heads, we're looking at a 2.5% across the board increase. Last year, I kind of recommended around that. We went a little bit higher, which is, fine. But I really feel that where we are today for department heads, overall, that, that is a reasonable increase. Non-bargaining, looked at possibly doing a 3.25%. That's just kind of being driven from what the unions, on average, you can see, although across the boards for coming up for fiscal year 27, and on average, it's about 3.3. So 3.25, I think, would be acceptable for non-bargaining. Those would be the ones on the GS scale. We have a couple non-bargaining that the civilian sergeants, as well as communications shift supervisor, where their scales are not on the GS scale. They're just paid either 10 at like a 5-step or 5 or 6 steps, and it ranges from 10% above a top paid dispatcher or 10% above a top paid detention officer, maxed out at 20%, but they just follow the union scale for those steps.
Matter, they're all, how many different unions represent those 7 areas that are up there?
Like how many people make up that?
No, how many, is it just one union?
Oh, no, it's Teamsters has 2, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So attorneys, conservation, public health are ASFME. Sergeants are IBEW. The roads, facilities, deputies, civilians are Teamsters, and clericals PPME.
Is it AFSME?
I believe that's how.
What's that mean?
AFSME.
Association of State, County, and Municipal Employees.
Federations in there somewhere.
Yeah, federation.
Yeah. So yeah,
Just looking at the conservation, that one stands out as being the lowest. I'm just trying to figure out how they got the lowest.
so that's a good question. We did some pretty significant changes in their pay steps, and for some, almost everyone except for the naturalists had some kind of equity adjustment. So that was negotiated that, because we did some things front-loaded in fiscal year 25, 26, that we would be tapering that off. And So that's where we kind of arrived at that. It wasn't really intended to be like you're getting really in the grand scheme. They just got some more significant steps and adjustments in their pay scales for their roles. So.
And then what's to be expected with these contracts going forward for future increases? I know it's probably not fair to ask you right now.
No, it's fine. I mean, I think we're gonna see trends. I think the market's just going to start to plateau more and more. Every organization, like a county and city, is facing the same challenges we are with these caps. Also, at some point, you know, the market is rising. Eventually, it's got to start to level off. So I would anticipate that we'll still see some pockets of challenge. You know, law enforcement definitely. You're not going to see probably a 2% for law enforcement. There were days where we had across the boards of 2.5, 2.75, and 3. We might be seeing that again. But it really depends, I guess, on where the market stands, but I would anticipate it's going to start to plateau more than you would have asked me that, you know, a few years ago when we were so misaligned, right? And we had a lot of room to make up. I would say we would be anticipating whether it's an across the boards or specific changes in the pay scales, step progression, things like that, where we needed to likely make those larger leaps in pay. But the closer you get to market, the smaller adjustment you really need to make is about sustaining that long-term planning to be competitive or highly competitive. So, and I would expect again, like where we're seeing at the department head level, and what the changes we did in the last negotiation, I would expect that we're going to be positioned fairly well, that we shouldn't be seeing these huge disparities. So, yep.
Just to not, for me to not drag this on, maybe could we get together maybe after the meeting? Just, I guess I'm interested with like the sheriff's office time off package and things like that. Just to know more about that.
Yeah, we can look at that. You know, that will be, so this next go around for negotiations is only on wages, and I believe public safety will be benefits, as in like health insurance. And then the whole contract is reopened in 2 years, where we'll be negotiating the entire thing, like time off and other aspects.
Yeah, it would just be nice to know baseline where things are for all the departments now, what that benefits package looks like.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And I think, yeah, those are things too to remember. There was a time where you couldn't, some of the contracts that used to say you couldn't use your vacation until your first year, which I think that's changed a lot. I don't think that says, and now we went to like 90 days, once you hit 90 days, which was what you could use sick time, casual, it's like you could use vacation too. It's always subject to operational need, but there are some things we can look at, certainly with the other aspects of the contracts, so. Our overall compensation strategy since implementing the recommendations from the 2024 comp study is really that externally competitive, internally equitable. That kind of seems to be our message, and with these proposed recommendations, we feel it can support that continued movement for elected officials towards that alignment, a strong alignment to the market. Again, just being competitive with the peer counties that we have. It also meets that responsible fiscal planning, that financial responsibility core value, where following some significant market pay adjustments that in previous years that now we can just maintain with some not as major market adjustments. And then of course that phased approach toward that long-term market alignment, we've been doing that I think fairly successfully, and just to continue that trend, and then internal equity across leadership and non-bargaining roles. So that is what we hope to accomplish. Can't predict the future. I did see Dubuque is talking about doing some significant increases, but they were kind of similar to us a few years ago where they really lagged the market. They tend to break the market down. Some of the other responses I've seen are mostly around that 3.5%. Not seeing, there's now smaller communities that may be different, right? Because, but in the top 10 or the largest counties based on population, we're starting to see that kind of level off.
It's nice to see the comparisons where we are, though, remembering where they were a few years ago, and there was such a disparity. We had some 70% and different things as far as when we look at that comparison to the market, so it's great.
Looking back at that, I just think it just points out that at one point, the market average for, some of these roles was a lot less, and wages just grew tremendously. And so some of these were still in a similar position that they are today, but in today's dollars that we significantly misaligned. If recorder was making 88,000 today, but they were still competitive even at that time. But yeah, you see those red ones, those are the ones that stick out, especially if it's 15% below the market average, you're really hurting, so.
I remember some of those early conversations, I started trying to do those equity adjustments, and it was, lots of discussion.
Yep.
You remember those?
Yes.
Yes, lots of discussion. And there are still even some where, in a perfect world, if you've been in a role for like 10, 15 years, you'd definitely be at market, if not maybe even above market, right? Or somebody who has 20, 30 years experience. That's where, when we did the comp study, we didn't do the full-blown recommendation where we really just said, we're gonna try to get all these to a competitive position. The largest investment would have been moving everyone based on their time in the role to the market. But I think we've been trying to, aim for that over time and make it a sustainable scale and compensation plan for everyone. So. But this again was just intended to give you information. I did share it with the elected officials with the comp board being dissolved and the Board of Supervisors handling that responsibility. Just recommend that you invite elected officials to share their input on their salaries, because they went from having representatives that would essentially advocate for them for their salaries to now really you are the ones that they can maybe advocate on their own. But so yeah, you may want to review those compensation board duties. It is just setting that elected official pay and adopting whatever recommendations. So these are just our recommendations. You could go with something else as well too. And then we just ask that at some point throughout budget that we finalize the recommendations of the pay for fiscal year 27 for non-bargaining department head and elected officials.
It's helpful information even when you provide it to the comp boards, but I was gonna say, there were some more accepting of that information and others did it differently, so it's great information. Thank you.
Yeah, but I think it's been I think we've been really responsive to the position that we were at and kind of acknowledging and recognizing it and the steps that it would take to get to a better, more competitive position with pay. Yeah, sometimes that meant changing things and doing things a little differently than what's been done before. I remember it was always, everybody gets the same, regardless of where you fall in the market, and we really can't. There was a time where that maybe would have worked, but now it just very realistic, especially with the need for retaining and recruiting. So. Other questions or thoughts? I mean, does it make sense? Hopefully, what I presented, that it's,
I'll appreciate, I would say digging into it now, I know you just worked on it even late yesterday.
Yeah, I had thank you, Michelle, for catching that. So, but no, and if you need anything, be available, but otherwise, like I said, just, I think I didn't time it this way, but 3 elected officials are gone today. I think Linda, Karen, and Nate, so, and they're out the whole week, so, just revisit that with them, and if they wish to speak on it. If not, then that's fine too. So. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was just gonna mention, we wanna be sure we don't forget, I know Jason's here for a reason, to just mention that during budget too, so I just meant kind of before we all listened to yours and then left or moved on, I just wanted to say thank you.
Are you here basically just to address anything related to the sheriff's office stuff then?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want you to waste your time. So I would just ask, I have one question for you on the guns, and then that way you can get moving or whatever you need to do.
Well, maybe, yeah, you might wanna come up and do a little bit of a recap of it, of what was in the email, so we know what we're all talking about. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah.
If that's all right, since you know why you were here and the emails that were sent, I know the sheriff's out this week or now, so. You could just kind of recap what brought us to him having the email and sending it out.
Okay. Jason Torres, Chief Deputy, Blackhawk County Sheriff's Office. So as far as purchasing our new firearms, we're on the schedule. Previous 5-year budget had this amount planned, amount for $50,000. Going to a new weapon system, the same weapon, but with red dot sights, which changes our holsters. It changes a few other things along with it. So, the previous 5-year plan, the previous administration budgeted $50,000 for that. The prices have gone up, including with that new optic system. It also didn't take into account the mass retirement that we had last year, because we had to replace guns that would normally be in our reserve. So we are a little bit lower than what we should have been with that. So factoring all those retirees, a little bit more expensive, and then having to get new holsters, that wasn't accounted for probably in the previous plan. Sheriff Neff proposed $80,000 for, with his budget, to work some of that stuff in. Along with that, we usually have like the basket weave for our uniformed officers. That's usually a more pricey holster than the plain black. He dropped that down a little bit, tried to save some costs. And then part of it is also timing wise. In order to get the firearms when we need them, we kind of have to order them soon, so that way it could be an 8-month lag time and get things back to us after we order them. So any delay in ordering puts delay on the back end of it. What we're trying to do is trying to avoid having to qualify with our current weapons and then getting issued new weapons and then having to requalify with the weapons. So that would be an additional cost that would be incurred if it got delayed a little bit too long. So yeah, Sheriff Neff, our firearms instructors brought him the plan as far as the purchase of these new blocks. And so that's why it kind of got rushed into, hey, we need to make a decision on this and try to get this ordered now so that we're not delaying in the future. So, anything more with that as far as?
I was gonna say, Michelle, you've met with either, I'm gonna say with Jason or Sheriff Neff, or have the discussion about this?
We had a very brief conversation Friday afternoon when it came up that they wanted to jump ahead of the plan, and we haven't approved that CIP.
Where was it in the 5-year plan?
It was in 2027 last year at the 50 that Chief Deputy Tronis mentioned, and yes, they did increase that to 80 for 2027.
Was it originally, the red dot system, was that initially part of that initial proposal?
And they think they were looking towards that, but as far as the cost, I don't know if that was actually factored in.
Okay.
But yeah, that is an increase. It's a more reliable system. It's a quicker target acquisition. I don't know if you have it, but it is for safety of everybody involved. It's a great system. It's a big improvement. Trying to have people more accurate with their firearm. So trying to get into that system and get us going with it.
I can't remember what the stats were for improved accuracy, but it was a pretty large increase.
It's like 70% or something.
That's what I believe. 77 is what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Michelle, in order to move it up, would we then just have to do a budget amendment in this current year to do the purchase sooner, or?
I think it depends on how the sheriff's office and, what it looks like as we get closer to year end for them.
Okay.
We might need to, because we.
And I think the manufacturer is pretty flexible. In the grand scheme of things, we're not that big of a department compared to some of these other places that they work with. So, you know, the other thing is we do a trade-in with our current system, our current weapons, and we also have a buyback that goes along with that. So there's money that gets exchanged that way to cut down the total cost. But it brings it right in line to about the 80,000 that Sheriff Neff was asking for.
So do you guys bid this out? Have you already been through the bid process?
I don't know how the firearms instructor did that. I think because of like the supply, they went with like who can get it in the timely fashion. That's what it's been previously, and you know, with the big turnover and everything like that, I think that's what the current firearms instructor went with is the people that you know looking for our timeline when we did them and that type of thing. That's how we looked at that.
So regardless of who we use as a vendor, it would still need this lead time, obviously, probably at 8 months. Is it 8 months or something?
Yeah, I personally don't know, but you know, they're the guys that look at this, even with as far as ammunition and stuff like that. They're the guys that kind of forecast out, hey, when do we need to order something? So when we can get that. I'm not personally involved in that actual process, so but they're the gun people. They're the ones that have that interest in that specialty, and they're the ones that are saying, hey, you know, this is a good deal that we're getting with these guns right now.
And the last time I assume we maybe did last time or not, but I was gonna say, and that was then, you said the life, we kind of were past.
Well, yeah, we're past the life.
So it's like-
They schedule 5 years is what was recommended. We have armorers that are on staff that they regularly go through our weapons and they make sure that they're not only functional, but they're properly functioning. And we're at 7 years on these current weapons. That should have been probably a couple of years ago.
How many weapon systems? Rough 50 or less, I'm assuming, probably closer to 40?
So we've got 110 Glock Gen 5s that they're asking. And part of that is, you know, we have just our regular deputies, but then there's also the SWAT team and different stuff like that. And we do have armed civilians that are also helping with the courthouse and stuff like that. So we have a squad that they have weapons as well. So.
And conservation,
Excuse me.
conservation has weapons, same weapons as well?
Yeah, that's in our budget.
Yeah, okay.
So like sometimes vehicles, we do rotations. These are just all bought at the same time. The purchase is made one time for everybody.
Yeah, and the thing with that is if you have people carrying different weapons, you know, that could be an issue at some point. And this way, like I said, we have, basically it all occurs within a month. When we have our 3 training days, people, they would turn in their weapons, get issued a new weapon, and qualify with that weapon. And that way, it kind of minimizes the amount of time that we have multiple platforms out there.
Everybody's transitioned.
I know some of the larger departments probably can't do that, you know, they have to stagger a little bit, but we're kind of right on that cusp.
So do we need an action item next week or so to just allow for the earlier purchasing and the higher?
Probably just for a budget, don't we? We don't need to take action on it yet, do we?
Well, it's kind of what they were asking for in the email. They want some kind of recommendation that they can go ahead and put the order in.
I haven't seen that email, so I don't exactly know what they're asking you for. But do you have to do a down payment?
No, it sounds like we're able to order, and again, we're a smaller department. It doesn't seem like they're worried about getting paid right in front of that type of thing. It's more of a try to get it ordered so that way we do have the order in advance.
So we need to, I thought I had looked at Sheriff Ness to kind of put it on our radar system that this is a change and we need to be sure we were addressing it going forward in our 27 plan.
It sounds to me like,
Maybe.
we could talk about it Tuesday, like,
Yeah, next
Right,
Tuesday, yeah, sure.
the overall CIP where you may be.
That's one of the questions I think we'll have after you do some of the board stuff today too, and we have that where we're at with the budget and having information for us to do our next round of whatever we need and go from there. I know that was one of the things I wanted to mention to this board. I know Tavis had mentioned a couple of weeks ago or whatever, or maybe a week ago, of having the Rose Cedar Valley back for on the 10th. And I thought that was a little premature when we don't even have our budget set yet. And last night I did hear Katie do a presentation on that, count me in to some Metro funders and Blackhawk Gaming, that type of thing. So I just thought we could follow up with her and just maybe push it off a little bit until we were done with budget. I think everybody would understand that. Just
That makes
to
the most sense.
make sure, I'm sure they come again, that's all right. But I just had, to do that soon, maybe, but not until we know where we're at with budget, so that would be good. But yes, if that's okay with waiting until next week to talk more about, and Sheriff Neff may be back as well to add information if.
And I can have our guys look at, talk to the distributor and stuff and see, as far as like the payment and stuff that you're asking those questions.
And if there are other vendors who we do RFP with, then that would be a different process, obviously, than just signing on whoever it is that was this.
So this is 80,000 for 110 weapons and the red dots and the holsters.
Weapon lights, duty holsters, and MOLLE adapter kits, stuff that goes along with it.
On each weapon, so for the 110.
Well, no, there's different levels, because like some investigators have a different size weapon just because of carrying those. So some of these weapons and stuff are different than the main, but they have different equipment that's required with them in order to have bullets and stuff like that along with them as well.
So that'd be information probably we'd need too, from some kind of spec sheet or whatever, just of what we're purchasing, or definitely you would, I would think, but I was gonna say, so that we know what it is we're talking about when we talk about the numbers and whether it's holsters or lights.
And that's obviously including the trade-in value, knocking that off, because I think what are the guns?
Well, it's 80,000, 407.60 for the guns. Total cost is 109,000, but then with the trade-in of 27,000.
Okay.
It drops it right down to about the 80,000 that Sheriff
Right.
asked about.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I was thinking too, we could have that, yeah.
that?
Trade-in value, I was thinking the trade-in value of the vans, but you've already built that in, so.
I was gonna say, if there's 80,000 for all those things, do it. That's a steal.
No, exactly. No, there's more along the lines of the guns themselves.
Okay.
It's 80,000, so.
Thanks very much, thanks for coming today. I said, I know, it was kind of like, once we saw Nate went on vacation and then sent out his email, and it was just like, well, thank you for coming.
Right, well, I think, Nate, he's at a training, so he went on a training, and all of a sudden, people started popping up with stuff that, if you would have asked yesterday, it would have been a lot better, but, so.
Michelle, I sent that to you.
Oh, okay, email.
Yeah. All right, I'm sorry, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do you wanna mind hitting that button?
Yes, here's
Just in case you don't all remember all the things you do.
Yes, I know, all these small agencies.
I wrote you a long list.
No, it's good to have the recap, no?
Actually came from the website, I believe, when I did that.
Worksheets in everyone.
There's a lot of activities.
Well, you do tend to forget about some of them, yeah.
So, the board office handles the expenses of the supervisors and all the staff who are housed there. Not a great deal of expenses. We have the board's training budget, office supplies, and we do have professional services in this budget is part of what we have invested in strategic planning. And I didn't know what you're planning for 2027, so I left that at the same level of 30,500.
Yeah, I think that is something we need to discuss. I know Amanda put in some training money in her budget too, to see if we had, at least had it somewhere, so, yeah.
That, the line that's called advertising and publishing, that's really publishing all our board minutes, which we have a lot of expense with that. It's part of the transparency we do with the public, so.
It's one of those mandated, unfunded mandates that we keep working on every year.
That's true. The bottom line ends up not rising very much, and it is interesting, that is because we had a different election by someone about health insurance than was predicted, so that kind of masks the real compensation increases. Those are in here, I believe, at 3%, so all the budgets, I think, are at 3%, so there would need to be adjustments to a lot of places if we change that.
And it's kind of straight across the board for the most part, all departments, it was 3, I think, so.
I mean, we've put in, exactly the union pay for all the union people, but all the non-bargaining department heads will look at. So any other questions about the board office? If not, we'll keep rolling. So maybe I can. All right. Our financial software has things split up into 2 different departments. There's a Department 101, which is for board agencies. Tends to be more things that we hire outside agencies to do in general. Or we have Department 102, General Supervision. There are a number of those, which I just gave you kind of a summary of the types of things we pay from each budget. I thought that would probably be the most helpful for you today. I won't read through them because we'll look at them on the budget form. This is General Supervision, which again covers a lot of operating expenses that affect the county as a whole. You can see in revenue, we have several different forms. Most of that is reimbursements for phone system usage. And since we're going through a change, it was a little hard to predict right now. In another month, I'll probably have a better idea of where we're gonna land on those. We have in here the dues to the 2 watershed management groups that we participate in that have asked for participation. The marketing budget, which you've already heard about, but it's part of this, so it's a line item in here.
So the WMAs are included in the
That's in account, the very first expense account, 6030, environmental restoration.
Okay.
Those are the 2 watershed management, that's all that's in there.
Okay, I was gonna ask about that.
That's just the 2.
Yes, as far as I know, we have never had a request from the third for funding.
They might request this year, the upper cedar, but it would be a request contingent on them finding a fiscal agent. Because right now, they just not even the mechanism for collecting, so.
They've got some planning to do to sort
Yes.
that out.
Thank you.
So then the row 9030, that says other policy and administration. We just track our audit fee there, plus the fee to apply for our GFOA certificate. And there's also a filing fee with the state of Iowa, so that captures all 3 of those. Line 0700, 9100, general services is really just our general postage budget, which you can see we've had some pretty large increases, which are primarily due to increases in rates. So I did increase that somewhat to try to stay even with that. And then those last 4 lines in the expenses again, that is where we're paying those phone bills that are being reimbursed in the line items up above.
So they're basically zeroing each other out.
Yes. Yep. We have had capital in this section. We don't normally have that, but with the ARPA revenue replacement dollars that we are using for projects, those are accounted for in here, so that is why I redid this. I broke those out into a separate section. And that will, I don't know if 2026, well, we will have it for a few more years because of the Axon thing, but most of those expenses will be done either in 26 or 27. And one other thing, I did add a request in here for some software for the finance office to use to help with, it's another module to our existing financial software that will allow me to create financial statements a little more similar to what you see in the audit. And I don't know yet for sure what other possibilities that would allow. But we just have a massive general ledger, and to be able to set that up, I might be able to give you a report. I'm hoping to not only, it will help me check the audit, but we might also be able to give you interim information that you might find more useful than what I'm able to provide today.
That would show like comparative information that the audit shows, and so that we have something to compare that we are familiar with.
Yeah.
Other than just, like I said, that you provided numbers, but they don't align with that, so.
Right.
Okay.
That additional cost is about $9,000.
We could do those like maybe quarterly updates or those types of things.
I would hope we could use it that way. I mean, those, they still won't be perfectly comparable just because there's so many things that only get adjusted at your end, but I think we could at least get to, for a lot of the departments, it would be a pretty reasonable comparison.
Because it would be helpful to them as well, right? It's not just like us.
It could be, most of them, you know, when you only have to focus on a portion of it, they get reports that go into more detail, so.
For their own department.
For their own department. It's when you try to look at everything as a whole that it becomes overwhelming in a hurry, so.
Yes, that's a little, the confusing part when we're looking at stuff for Axon yet. I thought that was gonna be more out of the departments than out of this budget.
Axon, the board voted to fund the first 5 years using the, I'm calling it replacement revenue. It's actually, we designated fund balance that we didn't have to use for payroll, so it's,
Okay.
But we're doing that for 5 years, so 27 would be the second year, so.
Okay.
Fiscal 29 or 30, and then we did sign a 10-year agreement, so the last 5 years of that, we have to decide how that probably becomes funded out of the sheriff's office at that point, I'm assuming. And that payment's about $212,000 a year.
So at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter, like where it comes from, because either way, it's gonna have to get taxed for, right? Whether it's
No,
a-
these first 5 years, it's not being taxed for. It's just that last 5 years will have to be taxed. Yeah. So
It's
this,
$212 a year,
pardon me?
and it was $212 a year.
Yeah, $212,000 a year, yes, about $1 million total, that's what was approved.
Yes. And we're in year 2.
I think, yeah, I think 26, well, actually, I'm wrong about that. Made a down payment 25, then 26, so 27 is actually the 3rd year. So the first 5 years, the ARPA designated funds will be exhausted in fiscal 29. So starting in fiscal 30, we will have to begin taxing for it.
Okay. Understood.
Other questions about this one? If not. Switch to are classified as the agency activities in the rural fund. And you've already, again, I gave you a description of what is paid from this department. And we've got the activity budgets. This does incorporate planning and zoning, so you saw that separate sheet just for them. Now you're seeing them rolled up into this. We've got planning and zoning. We also have the Northeast Iowa Response Group, which is our regional hazardous material response. And the way that they work that, they bill us the full amount for the county. You can see that $31,915 toward the bottom of expenses. But we then turn around and bill the participating cities. So in the revenue side, you can see that we collect most of that back. Not all of it, there's a portion that it is truly paid by the county. The second expense line, disaster emergency management, that is what we pay the Emergency Management Association for our share of disaster response. Budgeted at $14,023 for fiscal '27. The next line is rolled up, that's the total amount for the libraries. And that's another subject we need to come back to about how much you want to fund them. This is at last year's level, they have requested, I think, $221,000 for fiscal '27, but I have not incorporated that yet. We have the Soil and Water Conservation District, who spoke with you last week, asking for $10,000 again. There is a firefighter association that asks for a small amount of funding, and that's everything that we have in this rural fund.
So if we were to do something with the Gross Cedar Valley, would it be in this fund? Since our
That's a
need
good
is for
question.
rural.
I would be more comfortable putting that in the countywide levy and not the rural levy, I think.
Okay.
Probably not this budget, I would think.
Yeah. I just have a lot of questions still on where we fund, what we're funding and where, not just funding it to them for their operations versus something maybe in that count me in initiative that everybody's saying we need collaboration and communities to come together, and it was like, so that's the piece I guess that's missing for me yet that I still need to do more research on, I guess, too, and what that means. What are those 3 big bets and those 8 initiatives that are supposedly out there? That might be something that the county wants to be a part of. But it's Katie, when I call and tell her that we'll wait till budget maybe for some more us discussion with the budget and then see where we want to be, but if there's more questions we want from them or something too, we can ask them to come back, but see if we can get more information on what those initiatives are going to be, since it seems kind of vague or so new in the process, because I think that was one of the questions even at the meeting last night. One of the individuals was from People's Clinic that said, commending them for the work done, but it was like, okay, what are the next steps? Yeah, where do we go from here? Like, that's kind of what everybody's waiting for. It's kind of like what's this jump off point to build the population and grow, not just give us money and we'll figure it out. Help us know what you're giving money for, because the Metro funders were there as well. They had it out at the aisle for that reason, just to not be a Black Hawk Gaming presentation. It was for everybody again, so we have one presentation, get your questions out there type of thing, not have 4 different presentations asking for money. Yeah. So.
Well, knowing that we've got ordinances to review and stuff, I've had preliminary discussion with them about helping with some of that too. And I did just preliminary, but that was more one of my interests in doing something with Gross Cedar Valley, is having their input and help with what we need for ordinances for more development in our rural areas, that we see something happen that way, economic development things. So.
Have you pulled any particular ordinances you're thinking about?
No, that was one of those paint cans I decided I was not gonna touch yet.
Yeah,
Just,
okay.
let's push it back down the road. But I do know, having some discussion, I feel there is some help that the Grove Cedar Valley could have and looking at doing some of that, so.
And I know I zoomed in last week, but the soil and water conservation, were those issues kind of resolved, that it was gonna still be the, you perform the service and then you'll get rebated kind of the expense, or you will at least have to bring something to us, not just say
They
this
really,
is what we're planning to
right.
do.
they really didn't mention that in their
I didn't think so,
presentation.
but I couldn't.
They had a memo in their materials, and of course I didn't get the materials till they were here presenting, but,
I just knew there'd been quite a bit of discussion and
Yes,
and
so
emails
I
exchanged
think
and
we're
trying to bring.
I think there may be some that's not strictly reimbursed, but we'll have a specific
Purpose.
budget for what they're going to do with it, and that they're gonna be spending it very in the near future before we would release the funds. I mean, it did learn some interesting things last week. I was not aware that their office person is actually a state employee. I had no idea what that background was. But it is a concern to me when you have one person managing multiple checkbooks, if you will, to know that each thing's getting put in the right bucket, that's all. It's just difficult when you're stretched.
So I asked about attending one of their meetings to ask some of these questions, and the problem is their meeting is the same time ours is. Tuesdays at 9 a.m.
They've heard that, yeah, like I said, they just kind of came back with that email because they were seemingly feeling that they couldn't adjust to that, but it's kind of like everybody else has to adjust if you want the funding. It's very different when it was $2,000, and we're saying here, this helps you do the service, but when you start wanting money for other things, then justify it to us, public, whoever. I know their argument is made that we're not a nonprofit, but it's like, but it's still taxpayer money that.
I mean, to me, it's not about nonprofit, it's about whether you are an entity that's large enough to have a system of controls, which they clearly are not, because they're a very small office.
Yeah.
So, to me, that is the distinction that we need to be careful about, right? It's not that I don't wanna fund their operations, I just think we need to do it appropriately, and I believe we're comfortable, but like I said, it did not come up.
Changed in the last few years.
Yes, well, yes, it was a big, it's not a lot of money
but it is
in total from the county, but it is a huge, it's 5 times what they were getting, so it did seem appropriate to understand how they're using it.
I just thought there should be more accountability to us
yeah.
in our dollars that we're giving.
Oh, which is why what we've done is been reimbursement.
Yeah.
So that we would have that. Okay, any others on this one, or you're good? Move on. I tacked these on, they're kind of homeless children. So here's district court administration, again, there aren't a lot, it's not a large budget. It's used, there is some interpreter expense budgeted here that we're required to pay for. And there's a little bit in here for court-appointed guardianships. And then we also, it's an interesting situation. We do pay Dubuque County a small amount for using a portion of one of their areas for the court system. The other counties and Dubuque County also all pay us a portion for using our court system. That revenue is recorded in a different budget. This is the general supplemental fund. That is in your regular general fund. About $15,000 a year. It's not a great deal, but it's because the court administration offices are housed here. The last one. It's our juvenile court services budget, which has remained, it's flat from a year ago. We fund the RAP contract out of here, which we are reimbursed for. The state provides that funding. Then this is, where we are required to pay a portion to the state for indigent juvenile cases, sorry, every year. That's budgeting at $205,000 for fiscal '27. Then we have juvenile detention, which is primarily what we pay to North Iowa Juvenile Detention or other, sometimes if there's not a bed there, they're going to other agencies in the state for juvenile care. Unfortunately, juvenile care that is allowed to be budgeted currently out of the general supplemental levy. I think that is everything that I have today. I got through a lot of pages quick.
There's quite a swing in that with the juvenile courts from past years.
We've had a lot, kind of just more issues, I guess I'll say that. That's one of those things that ebbs and flows.
So yeah, you look at an extra sheet, general county supervision, general supplemental as well. I think I need to do that one.
I wonder if I forgot to, I'm trying to get all these open before this started, but.
Yeah, no, this one, I just think you probably just misplaced one.
Nope, I think that's it. I think we've covered them all.
Most of those operating expenses for insurance.
Oh, yes, insurance. What is that one? I apologize, you're right
Good.
with that.
I was gonna say, that's what I thought,
I
that's
know.
what pages that she has.
So many I can't even keep track of.
Okay.
Let's see. I must have right by it. This is primarily our property and liability insurance. Although the revenue is the revenue from the other counties for using our courtrooms, that 15,000 you see up there. So unemployment, that one's kind of hard to predict, so we have I did cut that in half a couple of years ago, but we continue to budget some there just to cover that. Almost everything else is our liability and vehicle insurance, which our broker, PDCM, bids out. We have been with ICAP for many years. Because that is an association of other governments, that tends to give us better rates. And it's still an increase, but I am very pleased with the projections we're getting right now. You might remember, we're coming off 2 or 3 years of really large rate increases for this type of insurance. So the predictions this year are much lower, and hopefully it will stay that way. See, I didn't do a good job of printing this because my percentage is on the next page, but I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, one thing I will throw out now, you might remember that 3 years ago we did purchase pollution remediation insurance. That policy renews in '27. I don't necessarily have it printed in here yet. We will have a presentation from PDCM before we either choose or choose not to purchase that insurance.
Why did they elect to do that, to purchase that?
I think part of it is the litigious environment we're in these days. It covers a lot of things, and again, I did ask for information from them because they can explain it far better than I can. But, you know, if you have a sewage spill or any chemicals, there's so many different things that could happen now that we might have liability for.
think if we were responsible for some kind of hazmat incident or something,
Right.
every department's as well.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, I was very relieved. This is much better than it's been the last couple of years. And hopefully, and these are pre-renewals, so we never know for sure what that renewal will be until later in the spring, but I'm hoping this is accurate.
Insurance. Can't live without it.
Is that,
Good old insurance, I said,
Yeah.
can't live without it.
can't afford it, can't afford not to have it, right?
Can you just talk us through the numbers on workman's comp, I'm making sure I understand?
Yeah, work comp always looks odd this time of year. It's the way that we pay it. We are with IMWCA, again, another state association of employers. We have to pay that in 7 installments, so by January, we've paid 100% of our premium for the 12-month period. Then we charge it out to the departments each pay period based on their actual payroll. So at this time of year, the expense looks really high, but as we go through the next 5 months, that will pay down, and hopefully it comes out to about 0. That's the plan. Sometimes we need adjustments and sometimes we get refunds. It's just how it works. That was a very good question. I should have mentioned that.
You said you took that down a little bit further even, I'd say a couple of years you had taken it down.
That was unemployment.
Oh,
that
unemployment,
we-
never
yeah.
mind, yeah,
We,
that was unemployment, we did it.
we hadn't had any for quite some time, but that's another thing that ebbs and flows, things come up and you have to pay it when you have to pay it.
Any questions on that? That finish the information?
I think that's everything I was gonna present.
Just which one of the line items was it that specifically covered the pollution? Is that on
That was, well, again, it was 3 years ago, and I'm not sure if we coded that to.
there? Okay,
Might have
gotcha.
been in 602, the liability.
Okay,
It was about, last time we purchased it, it was, I think, 44,000 for 3 years. Just for some reason, they sell it 3 years at once. You can't
Okay.
buy it, you don't do it annually, you buy
that's
it
it.
every 3rd year, and it covers 3 years.
Yeah, I think that's what happened when we questioned it or wanted to discuss it, too, we were in mid-cycle.
So there will be more to come on that one.
That usually comes when we have that insurance meeting.
That, they have changed administrators at ICAP, so maybe it will be sooner, but it's been a little frantic the last 2 years. They have not been able to get premium quotes out to people until like mid to end June. So I hope it'll be a little sooner than that. But you just don't know, it's beyond our control when that happens. So next week, I think we're ready. I'll be able to show kind of the overall budget, except possibly debt service. We probably aren't ready for that till we look at capital a little bit more. So we can look at the overall initial draft, if it's only the initial draft, and capital. And then I think you'll be ready to start making choices about it.
So next week, I think we'll pretty much have a good picture, at least where we're at, and then start the next week, following week to do.
Yep.
Or revisit
Yes,
department
whatever you have
budgets or
questions
whatever we
about.
wanna do, or, yeah,
Yep.
okay.
Yep.
Sound good for everybody?
Yep.
All right, then, we'll move on to item number 10, legislative update.
Just a quick update. Last Wednesday, I spent at the Capitol talking to several legislators about some of the proposed legislation. With that, it was kind of interesting with one of our local, not urban local legislators, one of our rural legislators. I got a chance to visit with him. And just talking about the property tax bill in itself. And when I informed him that we were told last year that 2 out of 5 homeowners in Blackhawk County is 65 or over, he had quite the knee-jerk reaction about, oh, we're gonna have to revisit that thought about exempting 65 and over. It's not that I don't want to have folks lower their property bill, but we also have a responsibility for funding the operations of this county too. And that was quite a conversation with him that they're bringing forward legislation that they don't have a real answer in fiscal impact. So again, a couple of legislators I talked with was hopefully people learned a lesson back when they passed 718, the chaos it created without a fiscal impact, that they may look at that this year before they just pass something for property tax reform. So several good conversations. There is some talk with some things helpful, not just restrictive and yet to come. With one of the legislators have some ideas. But as far as our UCC group, they're going to be asking us to take a position on several of these pieces of legislation here soon. I think they're going to kind of wait now until we get closer to funnel and see if they got much for legs. But don't be surprised if we're not coming back and asking the board to take a position on something that's all of a sudden it's got a lot of attention and they're trying to move something forward in a hurry.
Even if that for the UCC to take a position, then it has to be unanimous of the 5 councils. So it's not, it's just that for us to say, you know, what our board's position is or what we feel about it, we get back to the group. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Because otherwise we remain pretty much undecided on some of those and we don't declare opposed or, and so it gets to be really something, like you said, and brought to the attention of everybody, like we need to at least register something.
2 weeks ago, they were to the point they're going to start asking us to get a position statement. So that's why I add this to the agenda. Right now, it's kind of, let's step back and take a moment and breathe before we make a position on it. So I can tell you.
Things are changing daily,
Yeah.
Daily conversations, so it's like, yeah.
There's several pieces of legislation that don't make a lot of sense, but come to find out, there's one that it's because of one county having one issue with one of their electeds is why they're looking at trying to oppose legislation on all 99 counties. So that was kind of frustrating when you hear that kind of stuff, that it impacts everybody because of one problem with one county.
That was the minutes, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, sitting here and getting our minutes finished before we left the meeting.
So there's a lot of things on the table to affect county government, and just ask you all to stay abreast of stuff and let us know if you're hearing anything. I know like the auditor has their group, the recorder has their group, treasurer has their group. If you're hearing something, let us know, because we gotta share that with UCC on our end as well, that there may be other problems we need to be looking at.
Who's on the UCC? Blackhawk, Lund, Johnson, Polk, Scott?
Dubuque. Polk's not.
Polk's not.
No, they're kind of their own
Yeah.
island and group, but yeah, 5 larger than them.
So the purpose of having a position statement would be, who would that go to?
I think that was what we were all kind of questioning anyway about the position statement. There was somebody, I was trying to think of who it was now, Rich, that was asking about that, because I joked, could our position be, yeah.
So when you take a position, the lobbyists have to declare on each of the bills so the legislators know who is for and against the legislation. At that point, then they can have other conversations with them. Well, what's the concern? Right now, all of them, the big concern is fiscal impact. trying to get the legislators to understand whatever decision they make affects us and how we're able to govern and budget for the services that we provide. So we do have to make a stand at some point when this stuff's moving forward, so we're sending a clear indication. If our local legislators have questions, contact us. What problems do you have with this? The bigger problem is when they're passing stuff and they're seeing nothing, well, there's no problem. And so they use the excuse, well, you didn't tell us there was any problem, you didn't register, so we didn't think you had a problem. So they just pass it through. So taking a position, and it's not just always against, there's been several pieces that we could be for. But at some point, you do have to make some decision as to where you stand with that piece of legislation.
I think the person that brought it up too, Richard, I think they were looking for trying to make it clear, more clarity to give to the legislators to know what that position is or why you took that, not just to say this is what we registered against it or whatever. It's to try, and I'm not sure we had that answered for us anyway of what that meant for us, because I don't know, and Chris, I know you've been on a lot years ago too, but it was, I don't know that we've ever, and Michelle is now, I know on the calls, that we've taken a position and made a position statement that I remember recall. So there'd probably be a lot of discussion on what that would have to be or what it was going to do. We'll look at the pros and cons of when you're doing it too. Is that harmful to what you're doing and what you want to accomplish? So that was maybe just what we did ask, but it's kind of a different year. It's drinking out the fire hose kind of thing, you know, where everything's coming out very fast. Usually it's not quite so fast. They did think the reason was that there were a lot of probably legislators that are in elections this year, and so they want to get out as quickly as possible and not be in this session too long, which would probably make several of us happy to have a short session. But in doing that, then they've proposed so many different things so quickly, and that we try to understand and can't read through it all enough. So it was just chaos here. Chris defined it a little differently earlier, but I was going to say, but it's certainly very, like a whirlwind thing to read. But that's all. So I don't know that we'd ever do a position statement or not, but it's the discussion.
As long as it's not like months ago when people were hell bent on making a statement against the districting, despite what Mike had told us that this is only going to be bad if we do that. As long as we don't get to that point, I'll be happy.
And they're, right now, what I witnessed last week is they're pushing a lot of stuff through the subcommittee to get it to committee. The next funnel where they start whittling down pieces of legislation is February 20th. So that week before the 20th, you may see a lot of action happening with some of these pieces of legislation. Then they get to the next step after the first one.
If they don't make it out of committee, they're done. They can put it in another bill and come back in a different route. You never say done until we're done.
Yeah, they can always bypass their own rules if they get anything back up, but.
They'd be surprised
generally
what they throw in the standings bill at the end. So.
Well, if that was on for that, then any reports or information for the board, from the board?
Just report that both Justin and I attended the ISAC statewide supervisors meeting last week. It is amazing to visit with some of the other supervisors across the state and learn some of whether there's issues or concerns or things that they're working on. It's nice to know that other people are having other problems that we are. So I felt good that way in visiting with some of the folks. But we got a chance to visit with one of the Scott County supervisors at the table with us. So it was interesting that way, and just have that opportunity to visit with someone right there at our table. But no, I felt it was well worth the time and the effort being there.
Do you have any comments?
No, I speak through Rich.
Glad you Oh, that's a first, isn't it? Okay.
And just again, this Thursday, we have our first round of the property assessment presentations. TJ and I, Thursday at Cedar Falls Library at 6 p.m. Folks can still register on the website and our Facebook page, or just show up.
Motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, meeting's adjourned. 11.